Have you ever felt that sting when someone looks at you, not with respect, but with dismissal, as if your worth could be stepped over without consequence? It's a quiet kind of wound, sharper than shouting, heavier than open conflict. In that moment, the instinct rises to answer back, to prove yourself, to let them taste the pain they planted in you. But here's the paradox. The more you argue, the more you bleed for their attention. You hand them your energy, your peace, your presence, the very things they never deserved. The Stoics understood this well. They knew that silence, not rage, is the sharper blade. A withdrawal of your time, your focus, your calm spirit can leave a deeper mark than any words ever could. Absence unsettles more than rage. Silent dignity always outweighs noisy pride. So the question is not how to fight back, but how to vanish from their grasp without saying a word. Because that is where real power lives. Stay with me, and you'll see why silence makes them regret what they once took for granted. Now imagine this. You give your time, your energy, your presence so freely that others begin to think it will never end. They stop noticing the effort. They stop valuing the gift. Like someone who grows used to the warmth of a fire, they forget that the flame can also fade. And then one day, without anger, without announcement, you simply step back. You stop answering. You stop appearing. You stop letting your life orbit around those who take it for granted. The silence arrives, not as a weapon of rage, but as a mirror of truth. And in that mirror, they see themselves clearly for the first time. Now picture their confusion. They send a message, and there is no reply. They make a call, and the line is empty. They look for you in the old places, but you are gone. The echo of your absence unsettles them more than any confrontation ever could. Because it is not you reminding them of their actions, it is their own conscience. Seneca once wrote that the greatest remedy for anger is delay. In your delay, in your absence, you are not punishing them. You are forcing them to sit alone with what they have done. Think of how uncomfortable silence can be. At a dinner table, when words run dry, the air grows heavy. Between two people, when one withdraws, the void says more than an argument ever could. This is why absence works. It does not shout. It whispers in a voice they cannot escape. They begin to retrace the path, asking themselves which moment shifted the ground, which careless word broke the bridge, which gesture of disrespect closed the door. The searching never ends quickly. It gnaws, it lingers, it weighs more with each passing day. But this choice to withdraw is not weakness. It is not passive. It is the active claiming of your own peace. The Stoics reminded us that our time is the one resource we cannot renew. Marcus Aurelius said, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." If life itself is fleeting, how much more precious is your attention? Every moment you spend with someone who diminishes you is a moment taken from what truly matters. So when you withdraw, you are not punishing, you are preserving, you are protecting the only wealth that grows when guarded, your inner calm. Consider this as a story. A friend once gave everything to those around him. His presence was constant, his help unending. They laughed, they leaned on him, and in time they assumed he would always be there. But one morning he woke with a new resolve. He stopped rushing to their call. He stopped carrying their weight at the cost of his own. Days passed, and those who once mocked his silence began to wonder. Weeks passed, and they noticed the glow in his face returning, the fire in his eyes no longer dimmed by their demands. They realized too late that access had never been a right. It had been a gift, and that gift was gone. This is the essence of quiet power. You don't need to slam a door. Closing it quietly is enough for them to feel its weight. You do not need to announce your absence to make it real. You close it gently, and the sound of nothing echoes louder than thunder. The absence itself becomes haunting. It is not anger they remember. It is the hollow space where you used to be. At first, they may dismiss it. They may think you are simply distant, that you will return as always. But days turn into weeks, and weeks into months, and they see you have changed course. Your focus shifts inward. Your energy no longer circles their gravity. You are building, growing, choosing peace over chaos. And that transformation is undeniable. The stronger you become, the smaller they feel. The clearer your presence becomes in its absence, the heavier their regret grows. In truth, this is the highest form of response, not revenge, not fury, just clarity. Epictetus warned that if you are ever tempted to take offense, remember that the insult exists only if you accept it. By stepping away, you prove you do not accept it. You prove that your dignity is not for trade, and the regret they feel is not something you created. It is something they created for themselves. So hold fast to this truth. You do not owe explanations to those who have already shown you their disregard. You owe yourself the discipline to walk away with grace. And when you do, you discover something deeper. You are lighter. You are freer. You are no longer bound by the weight of convincing anyone of your worth, because your worth was never theirs to measure. And here lies the paradox. The quieter you become, the louder your absence speaks. The less you try to prove, the more undeniable your strength appears. Those who once dismissed you will feel it in every room you no longer enter, in every conversation you no longer join, in every demand you no longer answer. That void is their lesson, that silence is their mirror. So remember this, you do not need to fight to win, you do not need to speak to be heard. Sometimes the greatest move is simply to choose yourself, step back with dignity, and let the silence carry the message they cannot ignore. And in that silence, regret finds them. It always does. From here, the lesson continues, because silence is only the first move. There are other ways, subtle, steady, and unseen, that show the world your strength without a single word. And each one leaves its mark more deeply than anger ever could. Moving into the second chapter, picture this. You begin to grow, but you do it in silence. No announcements, no declarations, no need for applause. While others are waiting for noise, waiting for the cracks to show, you are building quietly, brick by brick, behind the scenes. This is the kind of transformation that unsettles people because they expected you to stumble, and instead they watch you rise without a sound. Now imagine the shock of someone who once dismissed you. They thought your strength was thin, your resolve fragile, your spirit breakable. They underestimated you, certain that disrespect would keep you small. And then they see you, different, sharper, untouchable. Not because you shouted about your progress, but because your progress became impossible to ignore. That is the power of growing unseen. The mistake so many make is believing growth must be performed. They think it only counts if it is posted, spoken, validated. But Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. Growth doesn't beg for witnesses. It simply happens. The tree does not announce each ring in its trunk, yet with each season it grows stronger. You too become stronger in silence. I once knew a man who chose this path. He was mocked by colleagues, belittled for dreaming bigger. They laughed when he left the room early, thinking he was running from the challenge. What they did not see were the hours he spent learning, sharpening his craft, investing in himself. Months later, when his work bore fruit, the same voices that once dismissed him had nothing left to say. He had outgrown their reach. His silence had become his shield, and his rise their regret. This is where the Stoic edge lies. You gain strength not in proving, but in moving. While others gossip, you read. While they argue, you plan. While they provoke, you protect your peace. Slowly, you change the rhythm. You don't reply like before. You don't explain. You don't attend every argument you're invited to. The absence of reaction becomes presence, and that presence commands respect. Your glow becomes the message. You don't need revenge. You don't need to tell your story. Every silent step you take toward purpose becomes part of a narrative they never imagined. Each battle you fight within yourself, each goal you reach without their knowledge, each time you choose discipline over distraction, these moments gather into a force larger than words. The same people who thought you needed their approval begin to realize they never defined you at all. Think of the ripple this creates. A mutual friend mentions your name, but with admiration. A photo surfaces, and they notice a light in your eyes they had never seen. You walk into a room, and the shift in your energy silences their whispers. They see it, they feel it, and in that recognition, regret pierces deeper than anger ever could. Because you did not rise to spite them. You did not transform for their judgment. You did it for yourself. You did it because you remembered who you are. And that is why it unsettles them most. They cannot claim your story. The version of you they disrespected is gone, and the new version does not even glance their way. Seneca once wrote, "Living well is the best revenge." This is what he meant, not loud victories, but quiet elevation, not shouting back, but walking so far ahead that their voices no longer reach you. The dignity of steady growth cuts sharper than confrontation. Let them watch from a distance. Let them wonder how you did it. The truth is simple. You did not level up to prove them wrong. You leveled up because your life demanded it, because your soul asked for it, because you chose to honor your own path. The silence that follows is not emptiness. It is presence, it is proof, and it is more than enough. So when disrespect tempts you to lash out, remember this. You do not need to fight for recognition. You only need to grow. And when you do, the silence will speak louder than anything you could ever say. From here, we step into the next move, a power that lies not in noise, but in the calm that confuses every expectation. Advancing to the third chapter, picture this scene clearly. You are in a crowded room. A voice rises against you, sharp and cutting, filled with sarcasm meant to belittle. All eyes shift toward you, waiting, expecting you to bite back, to defend yourself, to snap under the pressure. That moment holds a weight heavier than the words themselves. For what happens next will decide who truly holds the power. The instinct inside you wants to erupt. Your chest tightens, your pulse races, your tongue itches to fire a reply, but instead you take a slow breath. You remain still. Your silence stretches across the space like a curtain no one can pull aside, and suddenly the one who mocked you looks smaller, unsettled, unsure of their own strength. What you just revealed is a secret few learn in life. Staying calm in the face of disrespect is not weakness, it is ultimate control. Now imagine the same moment on the street. A stranger bumps into you deliberately, spits out an insult, waiting for your anger, yet you walk on, shoulders square, eyes steady, not granting them the fuel they came for. They are left speaking into empty air, starved of the reaction they so desperately sought. And you, instead of carrying the poison of their words, continue untouched. This is not suppression of feeling. It is mastery of self. The Stoics would call this the true kingdom, the realm where you alone command your own mind. Epictetus warned us long ago, any person capable of angering you becomes your master. He was not exaggerating. To lose your temper is to hand over your freedom. The one who disrespected you now controls your voice, your body, your peace. But when you refuse to be moved, when you choose stillness over chaos, you take that power back instantly. You deny them the victory of seeing you unravel. Here's where the paradox unfolds. Most people confuse calmness with passivity. They think that if you do not shout back, you have surrendered. They could not be more wrong. To remain calm when provoked is one of the highest forms of strength. Anyone can scream, anyone can slam doors or throw insults, but very few can hold themselves steady when every nerve is urging them to react. Calmness is not emptiness. It is precision. It is the sharp edge of discipline. Let me share a story. I once knew a man who worked in an environment where mockery was constant. His colleagues thrived on cutting remarks, laughing at one another's expense. One day, he became the target. They teased him, waiting for him to protest, to fight for his dignity with loud words. Instead, he smiled softly, then carried on with his work as though nothing had been said. The laughter faltered, their energy crumbled. Days later, one of them admitted privately, "I don't know how you did that. If it were me, I'd still be fuming." And that is exactly the point. His calmness revealed who was truly in control. His silence was louder than any defense. Seneca also spoke of this truth. He who angers you conquers you. When someone disrespects you, their true goal is not just to insult. It is to seize control of your emotions, to drag you into their storm. And when you remain calm, you show them what they feared most, that their words have no power. This is why they regret it later. Not because you scolded them, but because you showed them they never touched you at all. Think about the nature of disrespectful people. They feed off drama. They draw energy from chaos. They light fires just to watch them burn. And when you refuse to provide oxygen, the fire suffocates. They are left in their own smoke, choking on the emptiness of their attempt. That is when their own reflection becomes unbearable. But calmness is not just a tactic against others, it is a shield for yourself. Not every battle deserves your sword. Not every insult deserves your breath. Life is too short to exhaust yourself in trivial skirmishes. The Stoics trained themselves to ask one simple question in moments of provocation: does this truly matter? If the answer is no, then silence is the noblest answer. Because every time you waste energy on pettiness, you rob yourself of strength meant for greater things. There is another layer to this. Calmness, carried consistently, builds a reputation stronger than steel. Over time, people learn that you cannot be baited, that you do not rise to petty challenges. They begin to respect you, not because you fought for their respect, but because you refuse to let them pull you down. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And when you embody that in the face of disrespect, others see it clearly." Picture the effect. The provocateur throws words at you, but instead of exploding, you answer with composure. Or perhaps you answer with nothing at all, just a calm gaze that unsettles them more than any retort. The room feels the shift. People notice that dignity is heavier than drama. And while the instigator tries to make noise, your quietness leaves the lasting impression. That is the paradox of stillness. It says more than fury ever could. I recall a story from history. When Cato the Younger, the Roman Stoic, was insulted in the Senate, he did not argue. He simply laughed softly and walked away. His opponents, expecting outrage, were disarmed. They had revealed their pettiness. He had revealed his freedom. Centuries later, we still remember the one who stayed calm, not the one who lost control. That is the legacy of composure. So, what does calmness say? It says, "You do not have the power to disturb me." It says, "My peace is not yours to steal." And that message echoes louder than any shouted comeback. It cuts deeper because it is undeniable. They can argue with your words, but they cannot argue with your silence. They can provoke your presence, but they cannot provoke your stillness. That truth unsettles them long after the moment has passed. Let us not forget the personal cost of anger. Each outburst lingers in the body, weighing down the heart, clouding the mind. But each moment of composure strengthens you. It is a training ground for the soul. Each time you master your response, you become freer. You become lighter. And most importantly, you remain in command of the only kingdom that matters, yourself. At this stage, you can see clearly why calmness is unforgettable. Not because it is flashy, but because it is rare. People expect anger. They prepare for conflict. But when you deny them both, you leave them without footing. And that absence becomes the very thing they remember. They walk away thinking not of what they said, but of how little you gave them in return. That is the moment regret begins. So next time someone tries to drag chaos to your doorstep, remember the fortress you carry within. Keep your voice steady. Keep your eyes calm. Let them feel the weight of their own behavior without you lifting a finger. In your stillness, they will hear everything they need to. And in their regret, they will realize they never had power over you at all. And from here, the journey unfolds further, because calmness is not the end of power, it is the beginning. Beyond composure lies another truth, the strength of boundaries, drawn not in anger, but in quiet certainty, teaching others how far they may go and no further. Entering the fourth chapter. Picture yourself standing at a crossroads. One path is familiar. You explain, you justify, you try to make others understand why they crossed the line. The other path is quieter, yet heavier with strength. You simply close the gate without a word. No shouting, no long speech, just a subtle shift in how you move. And slowly, those who once thought they owned access to your time realize the road they used to walk is no longer open. Now imagine the look on their faces when they notice it. At first, they think you are busy, then they assume you are distracted. But days turn into weeks, and they feel the distance. Their calls unanswered, their requests politely ignored, their demands falling into silence. You did not slam a door. You did not make a scene. You simply chose to stop carrying what was never yours to bear. That is the essence of boundaries. Not walls of stone, but filters of clarity. Letting in what nourishes you, keeping out what poisons you. The Stoics taught that true strength does not need explanation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. The same principle applies here. Waste no more time arguing about why your peace matters. Live it, protect it, enforce it, without apology, without guilt. Because your peace is not something to negotiate, it is your duty to yourself. Let me share a story. A woman I once knew spent years saying yes when she wanted to say no. Every favor asked, she agreed. Every demand made, she obeyed. People loved her availability, but not her. They praised her kindness while draining her spirit. One day, quietly, she changed. She stopped answering every message. She stopped showing up when called only for convenience. She stopped sacrificing her rest for those who never offered theirs in return. At first, people were confused. Some were even angry. But in time, something shifted. They began to notice that she carried herself differently, lighter, stronger, and the very ones who took her for granted now regretted the absence of the person they once overlooked. She had not become cruel, she had become clear. Clarity unsettles people, especially those who benefited from your lack of it. When you enforce a boundary without fanfare, you reveal a truth they did not want to see. They no longer control the terms of access to your life. They can no longer guilt you, manipulate you, or push past your limits without consequence. And that consequence is silence, distance, absence, nothing to argue with, nothing to twist, only themselves, sitting with the reality that they lost something valuable because they could not honor it. This is where regret begins, not in the moment of confrontation, but in the long echo of absence. They remember how generous you used to be, how patient, how forgiving. They compare it to the quiet distance they feel now, and the space between those two realities fills with regret. You did not tell them they lost you. You showed them by no longer being where they expected you to be. But there is more. Setting boundaries without revenge is the higher road. It is tempting to strike back, to prove your worth with fire. Yet Seneca warned that living well is the best revenge. To rise above is to deny resentment the power to live inside you. Revenge ties you to the one who wronged you. Boundaries free you. By choosing not to retaliate, you keep your energy in your own hands. You evolve while they remain stuck in the same small cycles. Consider how often revenge keeps people chained to the past. You replay what you will say. You rehearse the moment of triumph. But every second spent plotting against them is a second stolen from your own growth. Meanwhile, life itself is a far sharper judge. Karma requires no audience. It arrives silently, often when least expected. Those who mistreat others eventually face the weight of their own actions, not because you forced it, but because life always mirrors back what we give. So you let go, you walk on, you keep building in silence. And while they remain where they left you, watching, you ascend quietly. You invest in yourself. You grow stronger, calmer, wiser. And that transformation, visible yet unannounced, becomes a haunting reminder. They once had access to you and they squandered it. Now they watch from a distance, unable to touch the life you are creating. That is a sharper sting than any insult you could throw back. Picture this. You succeed without their validation. You glow without their approval. You carry peace that no insult can disrupt. They hear whispers of your progress, perhaps through mutual friends, perhaps in passing glances. And the question burns in them. How did you do it without me? The mystery becomes part of their regret. You never gave them the satisfaction of a fight, never offered the fuel of confrontation. You simply lived, and your life became the answer they cannot bear. There is profound dignity in this choice. To keep walking, even when you know you could turn and strike. To refuse the petty stage, because you know your story deserves more. Not everyone deserves a seat close enough to witness your rise. By keeping your circle tight, your boundaries firm, and your energy intact, you claim something greater than victory. You claim peace. And here is the deepest truth. Every step you take forward in silence becomes a lesson louder than anger. Every moment you protect your energy without explanation becomes a standard others cannot ignore. Over time, they realize the distance between who you were and who you are now. That gap is filled with one undeniable weight: regret. Not because you became someone else, but because you finally chose yourself. So when the urge rises to prove your worth to those who disrespected you, pause. Remember that life has a way of handling what words cannot. Remember that your silence, your discipline, your growth is already enough. Let them watch from afar. Let them wonder. Because your story was never theirs to define, and your boundaries, held with quiet strength, will echo louder than any revenge could. From here, we step into the final movement, where the act of walking away altogether, disappearing with dignity, becomes the closing stroke that turns silence into a legacy. At this stage, imagine standing at the threshold of a room that has grown heavy with disrespect. The voices inside expect you to stay. They assume you will keep showing up, keep giving, keep tolerating. They mistake your presence for permanence. But then, without warning, you step out. No sound of anger, no slammed door, only quiet footsteps carrying you away. And in that silence, something shifts. The absence speaks louder than any words ever could. Now imagine how they feel in that moment. At first, they shrug. They convince themselves you will return, as you always did. They believe your loyalty will outweigh your dignity. But days pass. Weeks follow. And slowly, the realization spreads like a chill. You are not coming back. Your silence stretches further than their reach, and the emptiness where you once stood begins to haunt them. The lesson arrives not in your explanation, but in your disappearance. The Stoics taught that withdrawal, when done with dignity, is not defeat. It is elevation. Epictetus reminded us, "You may fetter my leg, but not even Zeus himself has power over my will." When you choose to disappear, you are not chained by anger or revenge. You are free. You reclaim the most precious thing you possess, your energy. You decide that it will no longer be poured into proving your worth to those who refuse to see it. Instead, it flows back into you, into your growth, into your peace. I recall a man who lived this truth. For years he poured himself out, for friends who saw him only as convenience. He waited for apologies that never came. He explained his boundaries again and again, only to have them crossed. One evening, he simply stopped. He left the group without announcement, without bitterness, without warning. At first, they mocked his absence, but over time, whispers returned to him. He's doing better now. He's different. They could not stop talking about the silence he left behind. The haunting truth was this: he had not punished them. He had protected himself. And in that act, regret settled into their hearts, heavier than any rebuke could have achieved. Here's where the strength of disappearance reveals itself. When you vanish with grace, you deny them every weapon. No argument to twist, no last word to counter, no outburst to dismiss. You leave only a void, and that void becomes their mirror. They are forced to face their own actions without distraction. They realize, slowly, that your presence was never an entitlement. It was a gift, and gifts, when abused, do not last forever. Disappearing is not ghosting. It is not petty silence. It is clarity. You stop engaging in empty conversations. You stop waiting for apologies that will never come. You stop fixing what you did not break. Instead, you choose the higher road, an exit without drama, without spectacle, without venom. Just gone. And that quiet exit echoes in the mind long after the noise of confrontation would have faded. Seneca once wrote, The greatest remedy for anger is delay. Disappearance is that delay magnified. You remove yourself before anger hardens into bitterness. You walk away before resentment builds chains around your heart. By leaving, you spare yourself from carrying the weight of their chaos. And as you lighten your load, you discover a calm strength that cannot be shaken. Think of the haunting nature of absence. A seat at the table remains empty. A phone stays silent. A door no longer opens at their call. These small gaps in routine grow into vast reminders of loss. They try to fill the space with excuses, with justifications, with pride, but the void does not bend. It only reflects. In time, they understand what their disrespect cost them, and that understanding cuts deeper than any lecture could. But here is the deeper truth. Disappearance is not for them, it is for you. Your silence is not a punishment, but a sanctuary. It shields you from cycles that drain your spirit. It clears room for new beginnings, for peace to take root where chaos once lived. Marcus Aurelius said, "Withdraw into yourself." The rational principle which rules has this nature, that it is content with itself when it does what is just, and so secures tranquility. Walking away is an act of justice toward yourself. It is the choice to honor your own worth when others would not. Picture the aftermath. Time passes. They may try to reach out, testing the old path. They may wonder why you withdrew, but by then you have grown beyond their grasp. You no longer need closure from those who created the wound. You no longer need recognition from those who ignored your value. You have moved into a life where peace is the priority and disrespect has no seat. Their regret becomes their own burden to carry, not yours. There is a certain elegance in this. To leave quietly, calmly, without fanfare is to reveal the deepest kind of strength. Anyone can rage, anyone can shout. Few can walk away with grace. That grace lingers in memory. Long after the noise fades, they remember the dignity with which you left. They feel the silence in the spaces you once filled. And in that silence, regret takes its seat beside them. So here is the lesson. When someone underestimates you, when they trample your loyalty, when they mistake your kindness for weakness, do not explain yourself. Do not fight for their attention. Just leave. Leave with such calm, such certainty, such quiet power that they cannot stop replaying it in their minds. Even in absence, your dignity remains a presence they cannot erase. And from here, as the silence deepens and your path rises higher, you begin to see the ultimate Stoic truth, that walking away is not an ending, but a beginning. A new chapter where your peace is unshaken, your strength undeniable, and your life finally aligned with the worth you always carried. When someone disrespects you, the instinct may be to shout or prove your worth, yet the truth is different. Quiet choices speak the loudest. Withdrawing your presence, growing in silence, holding your composure, setting clear boundaries, and leaving with grace all leave an imprint no words could. Regret comes not from your noise, but from your absence and your rise. If this message spoke to you, remember to subscribe and share your thoughts below with just 2 words: silent power. Keep rising. The next step awaits you.